Hey everybody,
Hi,
I'm Hob,
I'm Jamie.
and you're watching Dutch and Dragons.
Woo.
We almost had that in sync. Today we are talking about setting boundaries in your game, and this time we're going to do it a little bit different. We don't actually have a box of questions. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the problems that we've seen in our travels as game masters and players, and how setting some boundaries could have probably solved those problems to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
So...
what kind of boundaries you guys should
and
set.
what kind of boundaries,
I feel like a lot of times when I'm going through and talking to people who are having problems as game masters, they sort of, it reminds me of that, like the nanny shows you see on television, where I get a DM and they're like, oh, I just have the worst players and the worst table, and they go on and on about why they're bad, but what it really boils down to is that it's not the players, it's a breakdown in the DM stopping bad behavior before it starts.
Well, and I think sometimes, we talk a lot about the rule of fun, and that you should use the rule of fun when playing and when game mastering, because it allows you to have a richer game experience. It's not going to go anywhere.
Oh, I was just going to pull it down just a little bit.
Oh.
I feel like we're all heads in.
Oh, are we all? Are we
all
all
heads in car?
And car. All right.
I feel like we're all heads in car.
Technical adjustment,
okay,
everyone.
Hold on.
Technical adjustment. Yep.
There's
Enjoy the hand.
Okay.
All right.
So that's a little.
So now that we're not talking to the hand anymore.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that we do and that we talk about are all about the rule of fun and enjoying your game and making sure that your players are enjoying the game by letting them do cool stuff. But sometimes letting them do the cool stuff supersedes a good game, and it can actually be a detriment to the game. And so when we're talking about these kinds of things and some of the behaviors that we're talking about, more than likely they're behaviors that were allowed because it was really, really cool that one time, but it was just that one time.
Yeah.
And then the behavior continues after that. And then it becomes a detriment to the game. So one thing that I've run into, and this is with our players, and it frustrates me because I allowed some things to occur in the game for the sake of fun, and it's actually created some problems for us. And that is allowing our players to bring characters that they've made outside of the game.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time at the table for somebody to make a new character to bring to the game. So I'm like, just bring the character and I'll check it out. And if everything looks okay, we'll go with it. Well, the problem with that is I'm not accounting for backstory. I'm not having an opportunity to talk to the player about how their character's involved in the world. I'm not talking about how they fit into the world. And when you're doing it right before a game session, sometimes you don't have enough time to really look the character over and take into consideration all of the potential problem points that can come up from it. And so because of that, I've had some characters that were way overbalanced or way out of balance with the game, and they just kind of killed the fun. And so now the rule is all characters must be made at the table. And generally we try and do that. If you need to make a new character, you come half an hour, 45 minutes early so that we can create the character together and we can have a conversation about it. And that is a boundary which I have set for the game.
Yeah. And admittedly, a lot of this we learned. We had I guess I like to call it this last campaign has been a try everything campaign. And I have a love-hate relationship with try everything campaigns. I like them because you get to try everything. I get to try a whole bunch of stuff that as a DM I have been wanting to see how my players will respond to it. And my players get to try a bunch of different characters and classes and stuff like that, which can be good. But a lot of these problems kind of creep up And we were like, okay, so now for the next session, we know some rules we've got to change a bit here and there. Which are good. But starting there, I think the first thing you have to consider when you sit down, you're getting ready to do the game, and you're like, okay, so what sorts of things do I want to allow and what I don't want to allow? Is the first thing is character creation. And do you want to just sort of give everybody full free reign of their character creations or their classes, archetypes you want to restrict, races you want to restrict? I know I've seen a lot of people, I read this almost every day. Somebody somewhere on the internet is on there bitching about the fact that they had a player who wanted to try a homebrew character class or a homebrew character archetype
or a race,
and they said yes, and then it came out that it was very, very game breaking. So one of the great things that I always put in there is yes, but I want you to come up with a standard character, because if this is game breaking, if I feel like this character isn't working out, I will make you change.
Yeah.
And I will say that. I will fit it into the story somehow, but you can try it, or we can try it, or maybe I'll say, maybe for one of my short campaigns, I've got a short campaign coming up, you can fly it during
one-shots. One-shots are a good place to test out homebrew content.
Yeah, or just 1 to 2 sessions.
A one-shot is not necessarily a single game session.
I was saying that something that's lasting.
A few sessions, right? Yeah, you got maybe 2 or 3 sessions long. But it's not a part of a larger campaign. It's just a one-shot adventure.
But while I might allow some cool, and especially if I think the idea is cool, I'll be like, yeah, let's bring it in and try it out. But remember that if it doesn't work out in the mechanics, I am going to put the kibosh on it. It's going to happen.
Yep.
Or the player is trying something where the rule of fun says that's going to be fun. It wouldn't normally be allowed in the rules. I'll say, well, this is not normally allowed, and I probably won't let you guys get away with this every time. This time I'll allow it because it just seems like damn fun.
Yeah, letting your gnome ride the barbarian as a mount is fun, but shouldn't be allowed all the time.
Right.
Actually, it's mostly just funny. But
yes.
But anyhow, so there's this idea that as a game master, you should never say no. And I see that's one that I see all over the internet. You should never say no. You should say yes, but. Or you should just be like, that's fun, let's do that.
Yeah.
But it isn't always true, and sometimes you do have to say...
it's not always feasible.
Right, and it's not always feasible, and sometimes you have to just start with no. And instead of going just flat no but, let's try something else. So it's sort of the other side of the yes but. Yes, we can do this, but, or no, we can't do that, but... what about this, right? So you present an alternative that is more in keeping with the balance of your game.
No, you can't try your robotic murder assassin in this game, but perhaps in one of my short sessions I've got coming up, you could bring that character in.
Right. So what are some other boundaries that should be established within the game?
I have a big one, and my big one is no tantrums at my table, which is very much, I don't appreciate it when a player tries to blackmail the game. And I talked a little bit about this before, but the whole I'm going to take my toys and go home unless I get my way, well, that's fine, take your toys and go home.
And probably don't come back.
Yeah, well, that will be my reaction almost every single time, and I will just straight up say it. If I feel like someone is heading towards that way, even in a joking, I don't even entertain it as a joke. I had one player who was she wasn't serious, but she was like, oh no, if this character dies, I'm never coming back. And I said, you can't emotionally blackmail my game.
Right, and it is. It's emotional blackmail, and other things. You know, if you're the host, if you're hosting at your house and you're not the game master or the dungeon master for the game, you cannot hold the game hostage just because it's your house.
Yeah.
You know, you can have house rules that are no smoking in my house. I really don't like it when people drink in my house. Please don't bring your bearded dragon to my house. You know, but things that are related to the
someone try to bring a bearded dragon.
I haven't either, but the idea is that you as the host have the ability to establish rules that are related to the safety and the cleanliness and that kind of stuff of your home, but you do not have the right to blackmail the game master or other players into doing things your way, simply because it's your house that they're playing at. And if anybody ever did that to me and I was the game master, I'd be like, okay, fine, we'll find somewhere else to play.
Yeah.
Peace. See you later.
If you are not the game master and you're hosting at someone else's house, I would suggest that these are things you go over prior to the game starting.
Yes.
As the game master, I would be like, yeah, I would love to let you host a game, and I'm totally cool with being a DM at your home. However, I want you to know that, like, you're not going to get any special treatment. I'm not going to give you special magical items, and if your character dies, your character dies. There's you have to keep reminding your players, the DM, I am not trying to kill you. There's a dragon that's trying to kill you. Your choices may have led to a situation where something is trying to kill you, but I am not trying to kill you. It is not me versus you, and so I feel like if you make sure that caveat's there, I am just the facilitator. They take it a little less personally. Yeah. So I always try to remind them at the start of the session, I am not trying to kill you.
Right.
But when I am DMing at someone else's house, I always say that too. I will not intentionally try to kill you. I never do that in my games, but if things go south, you can't just look at me and say, I don't want this to happen because it's my house.
Right. Because that's not okay.
Because I will tell you, if that's the way you feel about it, I will pack up and go. I will be like, fine, then it's not happening at all.
Yeah, and in most cases, immediately. What are some other boundaries? We've talked about this extensively, and
yeah, we've talked about that. We talk about this quite extensively, and there are not a lot of great question and answers for this.
So examples of other ways that the game has gone off the rails because of a lack of boundaries.
One of the things I find that I kind of have to remind my players of is my players have a really bad habit of getting chit-chatty about life in the middle of the game. Yes. So they'll be waiting for their turn in combat, and instead of, like, they've made their game plan, they've thought about it, but instead of listening to what's going on around them, they start talking about their cute cats or their problem at work with the person sitting next to them. And I have to go, hey guys, if this person... combat is always changing. The thing you were going to attack is going to die. You're going to have to rework your plan. All right, hold on a second.
All right.
Yeah, so they...
Coffee, like magic.
Yeah, I like coffee. So they start discussing stuff in the middle of battle because, you know, anyone
waiting for your turn is boring.
Yeah, waiting for your turn is boring, and it's harder. Like, the larger the group, the more boring the waiting for your turn in combat can be. But I always say, I know that waiting is hard. I'm sorry about that. Know that waiting is hard, but please refrain from doing that, because now you're not paying attention to what's going on, and inevitably, the person who starts the combat goes all the way around. They come back to them and they go, oh, okay, what's going on?
Yeah. And that's a real big problem, because you got to figure that it takes anywhere from 1.5 to 3 minutes to resolve each person's individual actions in a combat round.
So if you have 6 players,
you're looking at you know, what is it?
Like almost 20 minutes before you get to come back around to your turn again.
Before you get to go again.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to get distracted from that. But everyone should be paying attention to combat, and that's something that you should talk about early on. Again, it's all about setting that boundary. Like, look guys, I know that combat can take a lot of time, but if we're all paying attention, it's going to take significantly less time, because I'm not going to have to explain to you what's going on every single time. And one of the ways that you can do that is you can say to your players, if I come to you and you ask me what's going on, you are going to lose your turn, and I'm going to go to the next person. And that's going to continue to happen until you are paying attention.
Or you can say, you went to, they go around, they're ready, you can do in-world deficits.
Oh yeah.
So they went, but now you're not paying attention, you're picking your nose, you found something shiny on the ground, you're now at disadvantage when you roll.
Right.
Because you had to ask me what's happening in combat. Your character does not know what's going on, so now they're at disadvantage.
Right. And so it's just...
Which is mean, I know, but...
I don't think it's mean. I think it's reasonable. Because they're slowing the entirety of combat down to find out what's going on. I mean, it creates a distraction. It adds to the length of time and forces everyone else to kind of break immersion. And so it's not fair to everyone else at the table who is paying attention. It's not fair to the game master, and it just slows everything down when it doesn't need to. Something
that isn't clear is Mob 1 and the cluster is like the little one, Mob 1 and the cluster of mobs, is he dead? Yeah, I could see that you might have been confused as to whether that was the one that died or was it 2 or 3.
Right, and a little confusion about who's alive, who's dead, that kind of stuff is fine.
Yeah.
But having absolutely no understanding of what's going on in combat is
because you were too busy
sort of unexcusable.
Playing on your phone or talking to your neighbor, that slows the game down.
Yep.
And I'm not a fan of that. But the caveat to that is I usually start my games at least a half hour to an hour later than my start time says, because I know that everyone's is going to want to come in, they're going to want to sit down and get all their stuff out, and they're going to want to chit-chat because they're friends.
And most of the time that gets all of that out of the way, and then we don't have any problems during the game either. Yeah. At least not with out-of-game chatting.
Yeah.
Every once in a while it comes up, but for the most part we're good.
Another boundary you need to consider is, do you allow cell phones to be active and on? This is really weird.
Or computers or tablets.
I know some game masters who are absolutely, this is a tabletop game, put it away. They will not allow cell phones in their games.
And taking into consideration that a lot of times that they're playing exclusively with pen and paper and maps and that kind of stuff. But with the advent of all of the technology that's available to help us as game masters and players, I tend to go on the side of, you know what, if bringing your computer to the game is helpful to you and it's not detracting from the actual game itself, by all means, go ahead. If bringing your tablet to use to run your character sheet on or roll dice on, I prefer real dice.
Yeah.
Just because then everybody's rolling them at the table and you can see them. And that's another boundary to set. So a lot of times I have had in the past where we'll be going around the table and somebody I'll look at somebody and I'll say, hey, I want you to go ahead and roll for this. And they go, oh, well, I rolled this. And I'm like, when did you roll that? Oh, well, that was my last roll. No, I need you to roll again. No dice rolls are used that weren't rolled at the time of the event. Period.
Or else you have people who just roll a dice until they get something good,
and then they go, "Oh, that's my roll."
And go, "That's my roll."
That's my roll.
That's not how that works.
And that's not how the game works. That's not how I like to play.
You know who you are.
And I don't do that as a dungeon master. I don't cash rolls. I don't roll a whole bunch of times until I get exactly what I want. And I expect that you as a player are going to behave the same way.
But how you're going to handle rolling should be something that you establish.
It should be a boundary that's established very early on.
But these are all things that you should really be thinking about. You've sat down, you've had your players kind of make their characters. You know in your head what sort of characters you want to allow. And you've really got to think of some of the weird and bizarre things that come up at the table that you don't always expect.
Right.
There are a lot of things that are going to happen at your table you're not going to be prepared for.
That's true. And sometimes boundary setting is going to involve making a decision on the fly to allow or disallow a certain activity or behavior that is disruptive or detrimental to the storytelling or gameplay elements of your game. And when you do that, make sure to make note of them and socialize them with your players. Let them know, hey, you know what? I'm going to allow this one time because it sounds like it's really cool, but this is the only time it's going to be allowed to happen and never again. Otherwise, your players, they will remember, oh, hey, you know what? Hob let me do that one really cool thing, and even though it's, it's not explicitly something that's within the rules, he let me do it that one time, so I'm going to try it again, and I'm going to see if I can get away with it another time.
I guess what we're saying is, as part of the Dungeon Master's job, is we say we facilitate fun, and I don't really like to be thought of as, like, I guess, the parent of the game. But I mean, you really are. You have to establish the boundaries and the rules in which everything will function so that there is consistency for your players and stability for your players.
Yes.
Because consistency and stability are what's going to make the game fun in the end.
Right.
And not chaotic and not, well, so-and-so got to do it and I don't get to do this thing. And a lot of that stems from inconsistent Dungeon Masters.
Absolutely. And so really, don't be afraid to set some boundaries for your game and your players.
Don't be afraid to say no.
Don't be afraid to say no. Yeah.
When it is appropriate.
And
I know they say don't say no, but don't be afraid to do it. Seriously.
Don't be afraid to guide the game in the right direction when distractions and difficulties come up. It's okay for you to be like, hey, you know what? Let me think about that for a minute. It's okay to say no. And I strongly encourage you to give some serious thought to what kind of boundaries might help your game be better.
Yep. So that's all of our time. Next week we have our leftovers question box.
We do.
So if you have anything you want to ask us, feel free to do so between now and then, or whatever.
Leave your comments and feedback in the boxes below. If you enjoy our show and would like to see more, please click the like and subscribe buttons.
Yep.
And then if you click the little bell, you'll get a notification when we post new content. Other than that, it's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.
Storm in the castle!
What she said.